All right, Ohio State men's basketball assistant coach Joel Justus joins the show today on the Views from the Schott podcast. Thanks for being here, Coach. Let's start with kind of the human element of your life, your relationship with Coach Dealer. You've known him for a little bit, obviously, before coming to Ohio State. So take me through how you know Coach Diebler and why Ohio State was the right fit for you coming into this season.
I think it goes back to, our time in the SEC, competing against each other, with him being at Vanderbilt, um, both of us being assistant coaches, obviously my time at the University of Kentucky, and then ultimately him coming to Ohio State, to where we would compete kind of in the same circles for recruiting, the same areas of college basketball. In the CBS Sports Classic, obviously both teams, were in that every year. And there was honestly a little bit of a relationship, with Coach Holtman. So, I always paid attention, just because of Holt being from, right there near Lexington, and spending time in North Carolina where I'm from. So I always had a little bit of rooting interest for Ohio State, um, because of my relationship with both of those guys. And ultimately the respect that I have for Jake as a colleague, and ultimately, what grew into a friendship. A little bit more professionally at first, but ultimately became a little bit more of a personal friendship as well.
So you might not have an answer for this, but you've got some interest in Ohio State last year as you see the season go along. You see the Buckeyes struggle. Was there anything that you identified that you said, man, if I were there, I would change this, I would tweak this, anything like that?
No, no, not at all. I mean, you're just looking at, at friends in the business, and there was, shoot, man, there was times in, the season last year that we didn't exactly have things figured out at NC State either. So, during the season, you're always rooting for people that you're close with, and you're always hoping that everybody kind of figures their problems out, or continues to do what they're doing when they've got it figured out. Um, Ultimately paid a little bit closer attention when kind of Jake took over, just as a rooting interest for him. Um, in all aspects, as someone that aspires to be a head coach as well one day, I took a little bit closer, look into his press conferences or his post game or pre-game media, and um, so it was more of a, like I said, it was just more of a supportive role, as a friend, knowing that that's a no one ever hopes that happens, but when it does, it's your time to kind of make best of the situation, and I think obviously you did better than that.
Yeah, and speaking of Jake, his press conferences, he's very passionate about recruiting the state of Ohio, energy. There's going to be a clear focus on three-point shooting this year, I think more so than what we saw under head coach Chris Holtman. Was there anything that stuck out to you or struck you in anything that Jake said in any of his press conferences or post game, anything like that?
I think right off, the bat, I mean, I think you go to the end of the season, when he talks about, the emphasis and the desire to recruit, or retain Ohio players, just because of his belief um, in the university first and foremost, but also just what he's seen over the years, the great high school players in Ohio, um, passion that they have for the jersey, and the fact that they do play a little bit harder in his mind, because they do care, and there is such a pride and there is such a passion for that Block O, and for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, and to kind of continue the trend of talking about this human element of coaching, we've kind of talked about this a little bit, before, but I think people don't necessarily realize that as you leave NC State, you head to Columbus, you're picking up your family, you're moving all your stuff, you're finding a new place to live, new schools, all those different types of things. So, talk me through what's that process look like while you're still trying to handle the job of being a full-time Division I men's basketball coach?
I've got a tremendous wife, who really kept a lot of it together, and put so much, into to packing up the house down there. And, a little bit of it fell onto me to try to find a place in Columbus. And, while she was working on wrapping up the house in Raleigh. And, um, there's a lot, there's a lot that goes on. And this was a different move. I've moved in different ways. When I left Kentucky to go to Scottsdale, it was a little bit later. It was in May, a little bit later, April when it happened. We didn't move until May when everything had kind of slowed down. Um, when I left Arizona to go to Raleigh, it was very, very late. It was in June, right there to kind of the middle of June. So you're about to hop right back into recruiting. Summer school had kind of already started when that thing had happened. This one was the first one that was, super fresh. And this one was also, really the first job that I had been to where, and I know Jake had been here obviously as an assistant coach, but where you were bringing in a whole new group of people, and all at the same time. Even at NC State, there was, some significant movement amongst assistant coaches, but they had already been there for a couple weeks. One of them had already been there for a month. So this has been the one that has had the most moving parts, especially on the basketball side with so many new assistant coaches.
Yeah, and speaking of those assistant coaches, so you, Jake, Taylor, among others, have all got college basketball playing experience. Now you step into that coaching world. So, how would you say that perspective in terms of playing before? Taylor's played Big Ten basketball, big time Big Ten basketball. How does that perspective make this coaching staff unique, whether it comes to game planning or scouting, recruiting, anything like that?
No, I mean, I think when you talk about our staff, I mean, I think it's a tremendous group of coaches that have been at high levels, both as players, as coaches. And to be honest, I mean, shoot, I mean, I'm probably the one at the lowest level. I mean, Jamal played at St. Louis, Dave Dickerson played at Maryland. I mean, you've got guys that have been, in big time games as players, ultimately big time games as coaches, with Coach being at obviously Ohio State, being at Maryland, Jamal being up in the league at Illinois, to Taylor being at Penn State, Northwestern, Luke Simon, excuse me, being at Baylor, and Vanderbilt. So you've got a group of coaches that have seen a lot and have been around winning, and I think that's something the coaches talked about a ton is bringing that to his first staff. Is a winning attitude, a winning culture, guys that know what it feels like, know what it looks like, know what it smells like, tastes like, all of those things, to where that's expected, and that's the thing that we're striving for and that we're pushing, and just continuing to impress, upon our guys, daily.
Yeah, and I think one thing that a lot of the coaching staff can bring as well, from what I've heard, is that the energy has been at an all-time high under Coach Diebler and the staff in general. So, are you getting in there and you're poking balls free and you're shoving on players and trying to get them riled up, or what are you bringing to practice along with obviously Coach Diebler bringing a lot of energy as well?
I think it starts with coach. Everything, is playing with urgency. That's the number one thing that's on our practice plans. The number one thing around our office. We talk about playing with urgency. We talk about dominating hustle plays. We talk about team above self. We talk about being our best late. And to do that, you have to have confidence. You have to have energy. You have to have connectivity. And I think that ultimately starts with him, but I think then it flows down to our assistant coaches. So it's every day is just being around with the guys, investing in them. Whether it's a little bit extra individual time with them, whether it's being into a team setting a little bit earlier. But I think what we have is first of all, you do have a tremendous leader who's setting the temperature every day. But I think you also have, like I mentioned earlier, guys that bring a winning attitude. So sometimes that might be a little bit more harsh criticism. Sometimes that might be a little extra positive encouragement. So look, it's what the job requires that day that each one of us is bringing.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of switch gears now, I'm really curious about your time at Kentucky. So you jumped, I know you had a couple stops, but you jumped from the high school ranks to Kentucky as director of analytics. Bring me inside your brain a little bit with how you approached analytics, what you uncovered, and how you applied that at Kentucky.
I mean, I think the analytics kind of side of basketball is really, depending on the boss. At this level, at the highest level, even with Coach Cal, like his whole thing was, how can we, create, a culture that our guys, focus on individual improvement, but also winning. And that year, the first year that I was there, was the year that we were kind of doing the two platoon system that we'd had, a couple guys come back that maybe hadn't really thought would come back to where you then had a tremendous recruiting class coming in and to allow everybody to be successful. We had to create, some kind of some benchmarks that everybody had to meet, in their short time, on the floor. And some of that was creative. Some of that was just, trying to create, some positive kind of information for each one of our guys to make it seem like, once again, that we were pushing them, to get to that next level.
So what I imagine is it's 3 a.m. You're sitting there at your desk, eyes are brown and dark, and the 5 o'clock shadow is there as you eat ramen. You hit enter on the spreadsheet, and there's a light bulb moment where you say, we got a platoon. We're gonna go with this two platoon system. Like, what happened there at Kentucky where you discovered this was the right approach for Kentucky, or was it just kind of incremental learnings over time?
I think it had already been decided that that's what he wanted to do. They had gone on a foreign tour to the Bahamas and played 6 games and experimented with it there. It was more or less, how do we kind of continue to make it work? So there was tons of competitions. There was daily competition amongst, the blue and the white platoon, to where each team was trying to be, the better platoon. And at the same time, we had to find some ways to create kind of positivity amongst each one of the individuals to know that they weren't being hurt, by playing less time. And I think that ultimately you saw that because we were successful, they were successful, to where guys, got drafted. 4 guys got drafted there in the lottery and 5 in the first round. And, Trey Lyles averaged, I think it was like 7 points and 4 rebounds. So um, there was a lot of good stuff with that team. There was a lot of great stuff with that staff, and ultimately, yeah. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it was a tremendous year. Going 38-1 and making it to the Final Four just came up a little bit short.
Yeah, first team and only team in college basketball history to go 38-0 to start the season. You're fresh off a Final Four run with NC State. It seems like, and it's my words, not yours, whatever you touch may or may not turn to gold. Take me through Kentucky, NC State. What have you found that really leads to longevity? And NC State wasn't Duke. NC State wasn't North Carolina. It wasn't a program expected to make a huge push, and you had to play your way into the NCAA tournament. I mean, this was a team that caught fire late. So, what did you find, I guess, specifically with NC State that allowed you all to have success last season?
Well, I think the beauty of our sport, unlike, and I will say this, the beauty of our sport, I think, is what high level college football teams will find out this year. You can still play, your season out. If you lose a couple games early, back in the day, you were done. Whereas now, for college football fans are going to see, an early loss or a loss to a really good team doesn't totally, derail your season. And I thought that was our biggest thing. And ultimately, when you're in college basketball right now, in the transfer era, you just have to continue to have daily improvement. And I thought that's what Coach Keats did there at NC State. I thought that's what our staff did, and ultimately our players bought into just continuing to get better. And one of our kind of four keys here is to be our best late, and ultimately that's what we were. At NC State, we were our best. In March, we had lost a couple games, close games in the regular season, but I thought that gave us some confidence to where we knew that we were right there. And I think if we kind of got hot, made some things happen, and ultimately, took it, game by game, half by half, and kind of media timeout to media timeout, and just thought, hey, let's go win this segment. Let's win this segment. Let's win this half. Let's win that game. So, it was really happy for our guys, but I think what it continues to show, I think a lot of coaches right now is you just have to continue to get your teams better, and players have to continue to get a little bit better each day, and ultimately, once again, be your best late.
Yeah, and on the flip side, you take a look at off the floor. You apparently are quite the closer, bringing in or helping bringing in the number one class ever at Kentucky 2017 class. I want to understand kind of the way you think, the way you approach recruiting. So let's start here with you've got hundreds of potential prospects to go after. How do you evaluate talent? How do you choose who you're going after? Are you just strictly looking at film and at workouts, or are you having conversations and then saying, you know what, yeah, this player thinks the way we want him to think, or how does the coaching staff, how do you approach that?
I think it's all the above. I think that most importantly is can there be a great relationship between the student athlete and the head coach? Every head coach is different. From Ernie Nestor, my first boss, to John Calipari, to Bobby Hurley, to Kevin Keats, and now ultimately Jake Diebler. You're recruiting guys, or evaluating guys that can have success at Ohio State, and have success playing for Coach Diebler, or Coach Kevin Keats, or John Calipari, or Bobby Hurley, as I said earlier. So it's not as much about what I think, who I like the best. It's who can we find that can have success here. And I think, you've got to continue to every recruitment is a little bit different. Like you said, there's watching guys with their high school team. There's watching guys maybe with a grassroots team, maybe in an international kind of setting, where they're playing with other really good players, the best players. So I think as you evaluate, you see the talent piece, and then you kind of peel back, one layer there. You get to know the young person. You get to see kind of their DNA a little bit, about their family, about their work ethic, about their, kind of all their aspects of their life. And, I think that one of the things that I always have tried to take pride in, both in recruiting as well as coaching, is just building a great relationship to where, you feel that there's going to be a good fit. And sometimes it's by building that relationship, you see that it's not, so sometimes when it's time to walk away, and when it's, going to be a great fit. I think by building that relationship, you can have honest conversations, to where I think that's what young people and their families are looking for, especially in today's day and age, is some honesty, is some transparency, and just some genuine, authentic relationships.
So the new college football game is out. I've seen Ohio State's social team posting videos of players playing each other. You go into Dynasty, and I don't want to simplify this, but you see a certain school has a grade for coach prestige, program prestige, proximity to the home, all these different types of things. So as you're looking at identifying a mutual fit between program and player, do you have a checkbox saying, hey, we're really strong here and we want this player to really be interested in these certain things? Or is it kind of a case by case basis where you just have conversation, and if vibes feel good, vibes feel good?
Well, I think it's once again, I don't think there's an exact kind of, kind of science to it. It's you do have that human element, as you've talked about here. In basketball, it's still, basketball is still a game, played by complicated people. and that's what we've got to figure out is kind of how can we take all these young people and put them in a locker room and ultimately get five on the floor that have such a great chemistry and cohesive bond that they're going to be successful. So I think you know your team, you get to know people, you also get to know your head coach. I mean, there's certain personalities that are going to mesh better with the coach, or certain personalities that are going to mesh well in a locker room. And so it's really, and nowadays, I mean, it's unfortunately, fortunately, however you want to look at it, it's year to year, in this business. And I think if we are, doing a great job of evaluating both young people on the floor as well as off, I think that we're going to, be able to have a pretty consistent roster here, just because of the facilities, because of the commitment from so many fans that we can, um, give young people a great opportunity. And then ultimately, I think you look at what the big brand of Ohio State, can do for folks, when they're older, and when the ball stops bouncing. I mean, from the educational piece to the network to just the family aspect of Ohio State basketball.
So you mentioned one thing there, year to year. The portal is a huge aspect of college basketball. You played in the non-NIL era, you coach in the non-NIL era. Now you're coaching in the NIL era. You get a new job, you're moving, you're doing all of the different things that you've got to do. And I don't know how much sleep you, Coach Diebler, he's got a newborn at home. I don't know what the spring looked like and how difficult that was. But when it comes to player evaluation, then getting a player like Amici Johnson, for example, how how do you guys go into the off season when it comes to knowing that you have no idea how much? Well, you have some idea how much of your roster is going to be back, and you don't know who's going to be in the portal, who's going to be available, who to go after. How do you keep your head from spinning in that portal era?
Well, I think the thing is it all starts with your attention, and I think for us, and what coach is challenging us to do, and I think what this group of coaches and young, I don't know, young old men, whatever we are, are going to be about is we're going to be about growth. We're going to be about development. We're going to be, um, about love, but at the same time, accountability and growth and truth, with our guys. And, um, we're going to do our part, to help, have some retention. Hopefully everybody stays, because if everybody stays, then we're doing our job. You lose certain guys, just like we will this year with Michi and, with Quez and Micah. And we'll lose those guys. Those guys are done with their eligibility. So you have to replace them. And ultimately, there's going to be, a good chance you'll lose, a couple other guys based on things that are really out of our control. The only thing that we can do is coach these guys up every day, enter into this facility with a positive mindset, with joy in our hearts and love, to work, at a game that we all have love and passion for. So, look, I don't know that answers your question, but I think, for us, it starts there. And then really it's just day by day and continuing to do the same things that we talked about earlier, with the high school guys, is finding those guys that want to be at Ohio State, that want to be in a locker room with other really good, driven, young people, that will have a passion for Ohio, and have a passion for the Buckeyes.
So whether it's a transfer or a high school prospect, how do you plan a visit for someone coming to Columbus for an official visit?
I think every single one is different, but like I said, I think you have, when you do have the portal visits, it's not as much of a, they've kind of done the college thing. It's a little bit more of about basketball. Um, unless you do have somebody coming from a small school to a big school, and they're maybe a little bit intimidated by that, or coming from a rural kind of setting to an urban setting like Columbus. Sometimes you have to show off what you got, and that's our biggest thing. And I think when you bring people to Columbus. Obviously, the city is just continuing to grow and offer great opportunities for a transfer. That can take part in great restaurants and take part in great nightlife and social scenes. And I think they appreciate the fact that when you're finished with your kind of playing career, this is a great place to bring your family back to, and this is a great place to kind of have um, be a lifelong member of a kind of fraternity too. So high school is similar, that you're selling the 40-year decision instead of the 1, 2, 3, or 4. Um, but it's still about, continuing to show off all the great things that Columbus and campus, have to offer.
So you answered one of my next questions there that I was curious about, which was, are you changing up a schedule for a visit, prospect to prospect? You said they're different. So let's say, let's imagine that in some world I happen to be a nice little 4-star prospect that you wanted to get in the Scarlet and Gray. If I'm coming up for a weekend, how are you planning it out? What is it? Maybe not hour by hour, but what are some things that you're going to sprinkle in to impress me once you found out kind of what I'm interested in, for example?
Well, I think it all, to be honest with you, it probably starts with, the football game, whereas like this weekend, we have a visit, the football game's at 3:30. Next weekend, we know it's at 7. So it's already right there. You've got, that's your first thing is there a football game? What time is it? And then the second most important thing is when are we going to eat? That's such a great time to visit and to have, kind of a a time that everyone's around and we break bread and we get to know about each other and you learn a little bit more about everybody. Um, so then the next most important thing is, all right, when are they going to sleep? So you kind of have to just kind of do those most important things. Right at Ohio State, it's football, food, and sleep. So um, ultimately you want to showcase the wonderful education that they're going to get while they're here. And we have a tremendous group of folks in the academic support kind of space. We have an incredible, sports science, fantastic strength and conditioning setup. I mean, we have the number one, budget in terms of nutrition, in the country. So you really are using that opportunity, during the day to fill it with the people, that are going to, kind of come in contact with their son, while they're here. And that's, there's so much great stuff to show. You only have a couple days to do it, so it is important to get that sleep. At the end of the day, so you're really just trying to kind of get your tours in, get your meetings in, and ultimately spend a little bit of time with current players so that they feel that it's a great fit as well.
I've heard now multiple people say that you have to recruit the team that you have currently because of the portal. You've got to continue to build those relationships. So, is that something that you would say is true? And if so, how important is that to continue to maintain and increase the health of a relationship of a player on the team currently?
Yeah, I think it's the most important thing. And I think as I said earlier, so much of recruiting, whether it be high school or transfer portal, is hopefully you're not replacing your whole team every year. And if you're going to lose certain guys just because of um, eligibility, you're going to lose other guys that maybe want a bigger role at somewhere else. But I think if we're doing a great job of pouring into each one of our guys, on the floor, just showing them the attention and the love and the care that they feel that they're growing and getting better. This is also a place that has tremendous resources, for our guys, but also resources that we necessarily aren't in control of in terms of the NIL space. And we're extremely competitive there, with what I would say are the schools that we're, competing and recruiting against. So I think if we do our job, in between the lines and in the Schottenstein Center and, in the practice gym, I believe that we're going to have great retention here.
Coach, take me through a day in the life of an associate head basketball coach at Ohio State. What does your day consist of in terms of recruiting, player development, scouting, all those different types of things? And what do you like doing the most?
Well, I think it all depends on the rhythm of that time of year. Right now we're in a little bit of a period where we're about to crank the recruiting back up. That's going to be a major part of our day. I mean, where we can go back out and see young people on their campus or in their homes. On the weekends, more than likely, we'll have visits here. If there's a home football game, we're going to have visits, official visits. Here, especially early on in September into early October. We'll work on, trying to get some underclassmen here for some unofficial visits for football games. And then during the week, you're mixing in skill work, you're mixing in some team skill, and then also getting back out on the road to where you can see people, at their school or at their home. Then once your season starts there late September, early October, recruiting kind of takes a little bit of a back seat in terms of your travel. It's always recruiting is a daily thing, but now you're into a little bit of a different phase where you're preparing your team, in a practice setting, to where then you get into games in November to where obviously you're preparing for opponents, to where then your season's over, and obviously we're right back into that cycle that we talked about earlier with the portal, and hopefully you're not having to replace a ton of guys on your roster. So to the summer where it's a little bit more of the player development stuff in the gym, but and then also the recruiting in terms of evaluating at your grassroots events. But it's nonstop, and but it is fun, and I think that's ultimately why we do what we do, and is to be a wonderful place like Ohio State, and to be with great people with a great tradition and the excellence that is here.
You're getting into a very fun time of the year. Players are back on campus, football's starting, and you're about to get into prepping for a new season. What are you most excited for your first season at Ohio State?
Shoot, man, I'm excited about this football everybody keeps talking about around here. I mean, it's this is really the first place that I've been that you have such a big excitement. I think both Kentucky, the excitement built in my 7 years there. NC State has a great tradition of football, but I think when you talk about Ohio State, the expectations are at a whole nother level. I mean, to win national championships. So I'm excited to see a football season and to go through the ride there with Coach Day and his guys. But I've been in the Pac-12, rest in peace, Big 12, or excuse me, Pac-12. I've been in the SEC, and now most recently in the ACC. So, I haven't really played a ton of Big Ten teams, other than Ohio State, to be honest with you. I mean, we played Ohio State in the CBS Sports Classic there at Kentucky, and I'm trying to think how many other played Indiana one year when I was um, at Kentucky as well, but played Purdue obviously in the Final Four last year at NC State. So a lot of these teams in the Big Ten I haven't really seen. I haven't been to a lot of the cities or towns, I guess maybe in some cases of the Big Ten, and with the new teams coming in, obviously with Washington and Oregon and Southern California and UCLA, you're adding a different kind of mix as well. So there's a lot of excitement, but I do think that there's a ton of excitement and buzz, around Columbus and for Coach Diebler and his era to start as well.
Yeah, Coach, when you get the chance to visit the booming metropolis of Bloomington, Indiana, make sure to join the show and give your review. It is definitely, the Big Ten is different, and that's okay, but that's why we're here. So, Coach, we appreciate you being on the show today and wish you the best of luck in the upcoming season.